Good afternoon, good evening, and greetings to everyone viewing this afternoon, wherever you may be, St. Lucia, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, wherever St. Lucians are. Bienvenue, bonsoir, avec nos cas, oui, messieurs, pour participer à l'activité nous après-midi. Welcome to the inaugural Reparations webinar for the Diaspora being held on a historic day, one day ahead of another more important historic day. And we meet virtually on the eve of St. Lucia's 42nd independence anniversary on the 21st day of the second month of the 21st year of the 21st century. And we thank you for joining us on what we hope will be such a successful undertaking that we will make this today at least an annual affair. I promise you, we have lots in store for you today at home and abroad, across the region, across the world, thanks to the technical capacities that have been with us for much longer than COVID, but which COVID has allowed us to discover the importance of, as with the use of Zoom and equivalent technology. So we thank you for joining with us, and we want to start off today with the a song by Herb Black. All St. Lucians at home and abroad will know of Herb Black, and in 2014 he wrote and sang this song entitled Reparations Now. And we want to start off today with this at the very top of our program for obvious reasons. And it is lined up and available, and we invite you to view and follow Herb Black with Reparations Now to put us in the mood for observance of reparations ahead of our 42nd anniversary of independence. And while we await the presentation of that video, which, like I said, is very important to the beginning of our session, we will allow our technical team to upload it, and we will go to Monsignor Dr. Patrick Anthony, who is going to welcome us in what we hope will be his usual unique way. Monsignor Anthony.
Monsignor, if you're talking, you need to unmute.
Good afternoon, St. Lucians, at home and abroad in the diaspora, everywhere. Welcome to our webinar. Welcome to this anniversary of our 42nd independence. 42nd anniversary of independence. So we begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we lift up to you, St. Lucia. We lift up our nation, our leaders, and our people. We place them under your protection and your guidance. We ask you, Lord God, to lift us, carry us on eagle's wings. Protect this nation at this COVID moment. as the apple of your eye. Papa bon Dieu, nous ka oui merci, nous ka glorifier, puisque pays ça là, c'est pays, nation c'est ça ou, nous c'est issue, nous c'est peuple. Pas tourner droit sur nous, mais moment ça là que nous besoin, longer la main pour sauver nous, pour aider nous. Lord God, we just place our country, our leaders and our people in your hands. We ask you to bless us on the 42nd anniversary of our national independence. You've been so good to us. Continue to be with us. Father, Son, and Spirit, forever and ever. Amen. I would just like to point out that the struggle for reparation cannot be disconnected from the struggle of liberation. In fact, the Bible, we just prayed, but the Word of God is so filled with this theme of liberation that fits in so squarely into our own quest for reparation. We are in Lent at the moment, for example, and one of the things that the church is asking people to do is to fast. But I just want to read to you from Isaiah 58, what Isaiah says about fasting. And that will help you to understand what I mean when I say that reparation has always been there in a way in the struggle of liberation, even from biblical times. Listen to Isaiah 58. Isaiah says this, shout all you are worth, raise your voice like a trumpet, proclaim their faults to my people, their sins to the house of Jacob. They seek me day by day, they long to know my ways, like a nation that wants to act with integrity and not ignore the laws of God. They ask me for laws that are just. They long for God to draw near. Why should we fast if you never see us? Why do penance if you never notice? And this is where the word begins to bite. Look, you do business on your fast days. You oppress all your workmen. Look, you quarrel and squabble when you fast and strike the poor man with your fist. Fasting like yours today will never make your voice be heard on high. Is that the sort of fasting that pleases me? A penitential day for man? Hanging your heads like greed? Lying down in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you think? You call fasting acceptable to me? Is this not the fast that I want? To break unjust fetters, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and break every yoke, to share bread with the hungry and to shelter the homeless poor, to clothe the man who's naked and not turn from your own king. Then will your light shine like the dawn and your wound be quickly healed over. So this is the Bible talking about liberation, talking about religious attitudes and habits and practices, which should somehow be empty if they are not grounded in social justice, in care and concern for the needy. And so I want to just quote from a poem from Langston Hughes, which I think can set us on the real tone for what we are talking today. Langston Hughes, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? There is a poet, Abel Meropol, who has a beautiful poem called Strange Fruit. I just want to quote just 4 lines from it. Sudden trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black body swinging in the sudden breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Our liberation quest has been there in the Bible, has been there in literature, has been there. Reparation is connected to liberation, and liberation has always been there. May, as we celebrate our 42nd anniversary of independence, and we, St. Lucians, at home and abroad, reflect on the justification for reparation, may we understand that liberation is the core of the biblical story, the core of our literature, the core of our quest. And reparation is linked to liberation. There can be no liberation without reparation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Monsignor Anthony. There can be no reparations without liberation. And as we continue, before we go to Ambassador Jocelyn Fletcher to welcome our diaspora participants, let's take a look, a listen, and be inspired by the following video from Her Black.
Imagine you, yes, you in your household with your family, your loved ones, tucked in for the night, and then it happens. Then they came, the invaders, deceptors, plunderers, traitors, ripped you from one another, man from woman, woman from children. Even babies were severed from their families, dragged into the dead of night, beaten, ambushed, brutalized, chained, and wrenched into dark, cold, musty, holding pens, put on a ship, leaving behind their language, their sold into customs, values, beliefs, their gods, their culture, sold into slavery.
Reparation now. Reparation. Sometimes all I could do is only scratch my head when I get to thinking about slavery dread. All the struggles black man went through is well documented, it's true. Now the Europeans refuse to give to us black people what is due. Rasta always know this is a must, oh yes, cause it was prophesied by Marcus. How much will they compensate? When will blacks repatriate? How long must the black man wait to get reparation now? Tell me, no, I'm not a West Indian, true son of an African, enslaved by Europeans and wants reparation now. Reparation. My heart goes out to the Haitians, the Negroes who fought for our liberation. They say Toussaint was a rebel, he was leading the black struggle. So for burning down of plantations, they held Haiti accountable. So Haiti was penalized in court, oh yes. To this day, the country is still bankrupt. How much will they compensate? When will blacks repatriate? How long must the black man wait to get reparation now? Tell me, no, I'm not a West Indian, true son of an African, enslaved by Europeans and wants reparation now, right now. Reparation. universities was started by the Vatican, continued by the Europeans. It was one great triangle shipping slaves out of the motherland. Now they are wealthy because of us. Oh yes, all we gained was the sign of the cross. How much will they compensate when will blacks repatriate? How long must the black man wait to get reparation now? Tell me, no, I'm not a West Indian, true son of an African, enslaved by Europeans, and wants reparation now. Reparation, reparation. Now listen. Now is the time I must emphasize. It's very important black people realize that it is united we stand as we forward on this mission. Our leaders must make sure we get proper representation, and for all the blood, the sweat and tears, oh yes, with one voice, let's demand our shares. How much will they compensate? When will black create? How long must the black man wait to get reparation now? Tell me, no, I'm not a West Indian, true son of an African, enslaved by Europeans, and wants reparation now. Reparation, reparation. Thank you very much. Good night.
Herb Black, St. Lucia's Herb Black with reparations now. And you see why I said this is supposed to be our reparations anthem, taking its place alongside all others that came before and that have come since. We have two welcomes today. That's how important our ceremony is today for St. Lucians at home and abroad. And our first welcome appropriately will come from the Ambassador for Diaspora Affairs. Let's welcome Ambassador Dr. Jocelyn Clark Fletcher.
Welcome and thank you, Earl. I thank you and the NRC for extending this invitation to my office, and by extension, the St. Lucians in the diaspora. As usual, the St. Lucians in the diaspora have not let me down. They have responded very well to the call to be part of what we consider to be a very important moment, a moment where they too can have their say. This is all about, has always been, this office has always been about the engagement between St. Lucia and our diaspora, and making our diaspora feel that they are part of what takes place in their country. But this reparations initiative has been around for quite some time. I have been following, I've been very, very interested. You guys have been sacrificial, not giving up regardless of what has come by, what has happened. You all have kept pressing on, and it has to go beyond. And by this, I mean that our diaspora, especially the youth in our diaspora, and believe you me, our youth groups in Canada, in Birmingham, and I'm shouting out to them, in the BVI, you know, they came out, our youth in Georgia, they came out strong and say that they're going to get on, they're very interested, and they're going to be online typing in their questions, because we couldn't invite everybody in on this platform. Those who have accepted to be on this platform, representing their associations, their groups, especially the president of the Union of St. Lucia Overseas Associations, I want to thank you for taking this opportunity to represent your people in the various countries where you live, so that they can have their say and they can be heard. Because all of us, what we all say, will help the NRC in progressing and in pushing what they have been pushing. It does not matter if your opinions or your questions differ. We learn, we get information, we grow. This is important. This is about all of us. This is about what we are and who we are. And therefore, I thank you all for being here. I thank you for coming on. All of you out there on YouTube and on Facebook in the diaspora, around the globe. My goodness, I saw things coming from as far as Switzerland. Thank you very much for accepting this call and joining us here to be in this moment. And I want to thank NRC for inviting us here, Yui, for facilitating it so that you and us can be part of this national initiative on reparations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Fletcher. And of course, like we said, we have organized this, like she said as well, for the diaspora, and we look very much forward to the continuing participation beyond today. We now go to our next presenter, Ambassador Dr. Elba Jean Isaac, St. Lucia's ambassador to the OECS and CARICOM, who is going to give the general welcome to everybody else who is participating today. Ambassador Dr. Isaac.
Thank you. This matter of reparations slavery is complex, yet it's simple yet complex. It's widely known, yet it's insufficiently understood. It's domestic and it's at the same time international. And as you know, its thread runs through the Caribbean and Africa, the United States, Europe, and beyond. It poses for us questions of equity, equality, compensation, race, respect, economic and social development. It's grounded in the past, yes, but it is an inexorable part of our present. And I think doubtless will preoccupy us as far into the future as is necessary for us to bring it to satisfactory conclusion. Given my role as ambassador to the Caribbean community, I want to go into a little bit of what the Caribbean community has done. Initial discussions on reparations took place during the 34th meeting of heads of government in 2013. Following up a proposal from Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves. And his proposal was that we engage the UK and other colonial powers on the matter of reparations. Then we had a Prime Ministerial subcommittee established and the CARICOM Reparations Commission, those were established that was established in September 2015. We have also established the Center for Reparations Research, the CRR, in 2017. And we have national reparations commissions that have been established, and they work collaboratively with the CRR and the CRC. So what are we doing? We have a 10-point action plan that is supposed to guide negotiations with European countries. And that plan, I know the discussion will go into it, but critical elements of it are the full and formal apology, funding for repatriation to Africa, assistance in remedying the public health crisis, education programs, and the enhancement of historical and cultural knowledge exchanges. Those are just a few. Critical there also is debt cancellation and monetary compensation, which you agree today is particularly vital. The work that we did as the Caribbean served as a catalyst for global movement for human rights and social justice. And that has spanned the Americas, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australasia. In India, for example, Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on Britain to pay reparations to India for the damage that was done during 200 years of colonial rule. Closer to home, we have the US Virgin Islands that has made claims against the government of Denmark. And public apologies have been issued by the Royal Danish government and the government of Denmark. Danish citizenship for the people of the USVI has been pursued, and the government of Denmark has also agreed to provide $10 million for the development of the USVI archives and another $10 million for a culture and identity project. Many of you, and particularly those in the United States, would be aware that just last week, a subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties of the US held a hearing on a bill, which is HR 40, result in the establishment of a 90-day commission and the appropriation of $12 million for the study of the lasting impact of slavery across the United States, and it would make recommendations to Congress on appropriate remedies. Now, what makes this particularly interesting is that both President Biden and Vice President Harris have supported reparations commissions in the past. And President Biden, during his presidential campaign, pledged to support a study of reparations. Now, reports are that bills on reparations have been introduced in the Congress over the past 30 years, but none have reached the president's desk. So we await the outcome of this bill. Today, I am very, very, very honored to join in welcoming you to this inaugural webinar to discuss the why, how, and when of reparations. I believe that it is these kinds of conversations that are really vital for guiding the way. So once again, thank you. Happy Independence, St. Lucia. Let's stay the course. Mr. Moderator, I am back to you. Thank you.
And thank you so very much, Ambassador Dr. Elma Jean Isaac, our ambassador to the OECS and CARICOM. We continue our inaugural webinar for the diaspora by introducing next none other than Her Excellency Dame Paulette Louisy, former Governor General of St. Lucia and chair of the National Nobel Laureates Festival Committee. Dame Paulette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bousquet, and greetings to St. Lucians everywhere, in St. Lucia and in the diaspora. Since the moderator has introduced me as the chair of the Nobel Laureate Festival Committee, it's to be assumed that I would be speaking mostly on the work of one of our Nobel laureates, and Sir William Arthur Lewis. So, ladies and gentlemen, beginning today, St. Lucia celebrates its 42nd anniversary of independence as a nation. I mean, not with its customary flair and pageantry and parades for reasons that we all know too well, but with no less conviction of our collective achievements, which must be recognized and celebrated. But what is perhaps not too well known is the fact that we are also celebrating the 42nd anniversary of the award of one of the world's most sought after and coveted prizes, the Nobel Prize, to one of our own, Sir William Arthur Lewis of blessed memory. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Sir Arthur was awarded the Nobel Prize for Economics in the very year that we attained our independence. Is that a happy coincidence or a portent for great things to come? While it took some time before he became a household name in the country of his birth, it is undeniably with immense pride that we acknowledge his contribution to the international community in so many fields of endeavor. In education, as professors at a professor at the London School of Economics, Manchester University, Princeton University, Chancellor of the UWI, Vice Chancellor, of the UWI, and Chancellor of the University of Guyana. In economic planning, so much so that he's referred to as the father of development economics. He's been a political advisor to governments in America, in Africa, and in the Caribbean. And in the finance sector, he was the first president of the Caribbean Development Bank. But in more recent times, however, and more than 30 years after his passing in 1991, he's being acknowledged as the intellectual author of the first blueprint for Caribbean reparations. Because it was in 1939, when he was just 24 years old, that his seminal work, Labor in the West Indies, was published by the Fabian Society of Britain, of which he was a member. His publication was described as a serious and thorough documentation of the labor rebellions in the English-speaking Caribbean in the 1930s, which Sir Arthur argued deserved urgent attention and redress by the British government because, as he put it, and I quote, "It is the British who, by their action, in past centuries are responsible for the presence in these islands of the majority of the inhabitants, whose ancestors as slaves contributed millions to the wealth of Great Britain, a debt which the British have yet to repay. He continues, if it were possible for the inhabitants to migrate, distress would not be so acute, but restrictions on migration prevent this solution. Either, he says, either Britain must help or the people must remain poor, unquote. That same conclusion was reached by a British member of parliament, Mr. A. Chris Jones, who acknowledged in the preface he wrote to Lewis's publication, Labor in the West Indies, that is, that Britain did commit a wrong and therefore had the moral and political imperative to make amends. Mr. Chris Jones affirmed, and I quote him, we, and is referring to the British there, we carry a grave responsibility for a colonial policy based on cheap labor and cheap raw materials. The facts are out, and we can no longer plead ignorance and indifference. Of course, there has been official irresponsibility and the dominance of narrow, calculating colonial interests. We can point to years of criminal neglect when official ineptitude and sloth have permitted affairs to drift and the islands to sink into unpardonable misery. Now a point has been reached when action is desperately urgent and British concern must be paid in hard cash. The hopeless squalor of today is in a real way the measure of the shortcomings of our colonial policy and our economic neglect. Now remember, he wrote this as the preface to a publication in 1939. So when he talks about the hopeless squalor of today, and we are in fact perhaps just a little better off, but not where we need to be. So that was 82 years ago since the Caribbeans called for reparatory justice. And Lewis himself argued that since no one would propose that the Caribbean should live permanently on the charity of Great Britain, it was therefore necessary to draw up measures in order to ensure that in the long run, the English-speaking Caribbean would be able to stand permanently and prosperously on their own feet. What he proposed was a foundation for independent, sustainable development across the Caribbean. At the core of what is now being referred to as the Lewis model or the Lewis Development Plan for the Caribbean is an increase in economic development activity, distribution of wealth, and fundamental economic reform. In other words, a kind of Marshall Plan for the Caribbean. It is that core that has inspired CARICOM's 10-point development plan for reparatory justice, which is the main topic, or which will be the main topic of our discussion this afternoon. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to the discussion that will ensue. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Moderator.
And thank you so very much, Jane Purlett. And we continue our discussion, which is our inaugural webinar on reparations for the diaspora. And we continue our program. I want to remind you, in case you do not know, that we have at least 10 representatives of the diaspora lined up to speak to us from 5 different places that we will be describing or identifying soon from now. And in the interest of time management, like I said, we're going okay for now, as long as we can keep within the times, ensuring that our questions are not teachers, that our questions are indeed questions as brief as possible to leave as much time for the responses, each of which we hope will not go beyond 5 minutes. And remember, folks, this is the beginning, not the last. So everything we do today, we will have more time and reason and occasion to continue. So we go to our next speaker. And I normally know how to introduce our next speaker. She is a former ambassador of St. Lucia to the OECS and the CARICOM. She is a former commissioner of St. Lucia in the OECS Commission. She is a former Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, representing over 40 Caribbean states across the language and geographic barriers. She's currently the chair of the UWI Open Campus Council, and I have strong reason to believe that as of tomorrow, we will be referring to her in another capacity, adding an extra handle to her name. And it gives me great pleasure to present our next presenter, the Honorable Dr. Ambassador June Suma.
Thank you very much, Earl. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Let me congratulate St. Lucia on the 42nd anniversary of its independence. I also want to use this opportunity to welcome the members of the diaspora to this session. I saw many faces that I know in the session, and so it is my honor to be able to present today. In my presentation, I want to make two very simple points. The first is that from the onset, independence for Black colonies in the region has always been linked to reparations. The second point is that independence was always linked to regionalism. I conclude with the premise that independence, regionalism, or how I term regionalism, empire building, and reparations cannot be extricated from each other. And all of these must be pursued by regional organizations. To the first point, from the onset, independence was linked to reparations. And I find my justification in Haitian independence and its subsequent attempt at regional empire building. You will recall that Haiti became the first Black-led republic in the Western Hemisphere and the first independent Caribbean state when it threw off French colonial control and slavery in the early 19th century. The Haitian Declaration of Independence was proclaimed on the 1st of January, 1804, in the city of Gonaive by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, marking the end of 13 years of the Haitian Revolution. You will also recall that the cost of that independence ensured that Haiti would remain impoverished as the young nation was forced to pay reparations of 150 million francs to France, which demanded compensation for former slave owners. In 1825, France was ready to go to war for its loss of slaves and its slave colony, in exchange for French recognition of Haiti as a sovereign republic. So Haiti was forced to borrow money from banks in France and the US to pay reparations to France. The current value of the money Haiti was forced to pay to the French, German, and US banks is estimated at over 21 billion US dollars in 2004 and was finally paid off in 1947. Call it what you may, compensation, reparations, indemnity. Payments were immediately difficult for Haiti. The first 30 million francs required a 24 million franc loan from French banks. The story of the first payment was 24 million gold francs. And on 12 February 1838, France reduced the debt to 90 million francs to be paid over a period of 33 years, which was paid off in 1893 after 55 years. By the late 1800s, 80% of Haiti's wealth was being used to pay foreign debt. France, the highest collector, followed by Germany and the United States. The occupation of Haiti by the United States was backed by a consortium of American investors headed by the National City Bank of New York. During the occupation of the US military, which took control of Haiti's gold reserves in December 1914, the gold was transferred to that bank. The United States would invade Haiti in 1915 to secure US business interests. 6 weeks later, the United States seized control of Haiti's customs house, administrative institutions, banks, and the national treasury, with the United States using a total of 40% of Haiti's national income to repay debts to American and French banks for the next 19 years until 1934. Haiti would pay its final indemnity remittance to National City Bank in 1947. What was seen as the audacity of a Black colony meant that Haiti in 1804 has inextricably linked independence and reparations in our region. This has not been dulled by the British strategy of granting emancipation rather than allowing the export of the Haitian national building and the growing number of uprisings in the region to create a free Black Caribbean. Though the British, with its gradual release of its colonies, tried to disentangle the two issues as it commenced its compensation drive even before emancipation, it could not remove the link between the two issues. The records of the Slave Compensation Commission set up to manage the distribution of the 20 million compensation shows that all facets of the British economy would benefit from the Slave Compensation Act of 1837, which was signed into law on December 23rd, 1837, and would benefit British descendants for generations. In fact, payments of the bonds to the descendants of creditors was only finalized in 2015. So don't think that this is very far away from us. Up to 2015, they were still paying the generations compensation for loss of slaves in the British colonies. That gradualism put in place by the British ensured exploitation of the British piecemeal from the 1960s. Today, some countries still remain colonized. And I'm saying that because right now I am in the British Virgin Islands. To my second point about independence and regionalism, we must never think that the two issues are exclusive of each other. Especially, we must never use the excuse of the failure of the British West Indies Federation as the basis of that argument. The truth is that the British continued with their gradualist policies and tried to create a federation that would assist them in continued domination of the region. The racist view that people who were former slaves had to be prepared for independence dominated their ideology. So we were forced to accept a modicum of autonomy to placate the calls for independence. Measured autonomy was never the desire of the region. We wanted independence. Then we were poisoned into believing that nationalism and regionalism were opposed to each other by playing big countries against small countries. The fact is that we will never realize the full potential of regionalism if we continue to allow that colonial ideology to permeate in the Caribbean. The creation of CARICOM and OECS says that we have recognized that we must work together to achieve the benefits for the region. It has not been an easy journey. The fact is that it is not easy, but but together we have reinforced each other's independence and continue to support each other against external threats. Without realizing it, we are empire building in the vein of the vision of the Haitian Revolution. This was especially clear when we established the Association of Caribbean States, which was created in 1994, when we sought to seek regional solidarity and to achieve meaningful, comprehensive economic cooperation for all of the countries which frame the Caribbean Sea. The creation of the ACS represented a strategic opportunity to develop new regional cooperation. The first sophistication of these sentiments was the recognition that a diverse region like this had all the human, social, cultural, and emotional attributes to advance the notion of regional integration based on South-South cooperation. In conclusion, let me reiterate that independence, regionalism, and reparations are intertwined, and that regional organizations must recognize that the pursuit of reparations is a move towards ensuring the end of colonialism and a reinforcement of self-determination. We can never be fully emancipated, we can never be fully independent without the repair and the justice which we pursue. It is therefore not an issue for CARICOM or the university. It must be at the heart of all of our regional institutions. Reparations is not some fly-by-night movement. We have called for it during enslavement and after enslavement and during our consolidation of our independence. This should resonate with the demands for reparations nationally and regionally. Let us continue to work together and move towards the success of this movement. I thank you, moderator. Back to you.
And thank you so very much, Ambassador Dr. June Suma, reminding us that independence, regionalism, and reparations are intertwined. Our next presenter, because we have now come to the end of our presenters, all of whom stuck within the 5 minutes. Our next presenter will be the author, Dawn French, who is going to be presenting to us on the series called Peanut. I don't want to go deep into it because she is the one who's going to be presenting on the particular story of Peanut's family tree. And before we go to Dawn, I want to remind those who are joining us from the capitals, the various capitals of the St. Lucia diaspora. We want to inform you, we have online Mrs. Cynthia Dahlia in Barbados, Mr. Aaron Francis in the British Virgin Islands, Mr. Ross Cadas in Canada, Mr. Sonny William Sonny in French Guyana, Mrs. Felicia Hippolyte in the United Kingdom, Mr. Cornelius Alfred in Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Petra Poloin in Barbados, Mrs. Uhana Obaizamon Wan in Canada, and Dr. Morgan Dalfinis in London, among others. We thank you for holding on. We ask you to bear patience with us. You will be on. We will start bringing you on within the next few minutes, but we have to do some programs in between to keep you up to date to what we in the National Preparatory Committee, the various stakeholder entities that are working with the National Reparations Committee, whether as individuals or entities, they are with us, the UWI Open Campus teams in St. Lucia and abroad. We have also the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, the Dame Paulette Louise's committee, the Nobel Laureates Festival Committee, the Archaeological and Historical Society, the National Youth Council, the Monsignor Patrick Anthony Folk Research Center, and many others, as well as and including the Ionola Council for Advancement of Rastafari, also the Caribbean Rastafari Organization, also represented on our committee, and very importantly is the Ministry of Education, which is assisting in our hosting of a series of lectures. We have national lectures and regional lectures. I'll bring you up to date with all of that a little later, but like I said, the Ministry of Education is represented on our committee by the Chief Education Officer. So without further ado, let's join Dawn French, the author, with her presentation on Peanuts Family Tree and the entire Peanut series, which, believe me, she's written more than many authors. Dawn, over to you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me put it in slide mode. Oops. Okay, thank you, and happy independence to all. I'm going to go through it quickly. I only have 5 minutes. So as the moderator indicated, it is a collection called the Peanut Tales. And the second one in the series is called Peanuts Family Tree. It was inspired, again, the moderator referred to our lectures. We have been doing it since 2016. And when I realized that the secondary schools were being targeted and not the infant and primary, I was prompted to write the story. The collection of stories always targets the under 12, which was a happy coincidence with what the lectures were doing or not doing, depending upon how you want to look at it. Peanut is a little character. She's 8 years old. She's a Caribbean girl. She's very nosy. She's always asking questions. And the reader, who are the young readers, the young children of our society, also encouraged to ask questions. So there's usually a tag in the story that says, if you want to know something, ask someone. So the plot line for Peanut's Family Tree is that Peanut and her 3 older brothers have an essay to write. They have different ages, so their essays will be different, but the information they require will all be the same. And they don't know much. So in the story, they turn to their grandparents where they discuss reparations and repatriations and the CARICOM 10. As indicated by previous speakers, these are heavy topics. These are heavy topics for adults. Can you imagine trying to explain it to your 8-year-old? So in the story, they do talk about the 10 points for the CARICOM reparation plan. And these are screen caps from the actual story. And they also talk about the ancestors, and not just the descendants of Africa, but the descendants of India and of First Nation peoples. So all that is we have tried to address that in the story. I view this as a long-term relay. And I've said this to the National Reparations Committee before. And you can see what I've identified as the various legs in the relay, with the anchor leg being our tiny tots. And if we don't engage them from now, all this hard work that we are doing, they will not be empowered to go across the finish line for us. So we must engage all levels of the society, all age groups. And I reached out to the National Reparations Committee when I wrote the story, and I offered it to them as an education tool for them to use. And just before I close, I want to inform everybody in the diaspora that National Reading Month takes place in St. Lucia in May. And normally I offer the Peanut Tales to the children for free. So if anybody wants to be on board, they can always email me. And that unusual email is because the Zatuberg is Peanut's imaginary friend. So I wanted to thank everyone for letting me speak, and hopefully I was within my 5 minutes, Mr. Moderator. And again, I end as I started. Happy independence to everyone. Mr. Moderator, I hand over to you. And in the question section, I'll be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, author Don French. We're going well with our time management, and our next presentations will come in the form of three promotions from the UWI Open Campus EDU, the people responsible for ensuring that all of you and all of us can see and hear each other and participate in today's activity. uwiopencampus.edu, the address is at the bottom of the invitation. These are the people who make it possible, and they have made every one of our 11 national and regional lectures possible. But we also want to look beyond just the people behind the screen. We want to look at the entire institution that they represent. And they have three flyers which demonstrate how you, the viewers, can make use of the UWI overseas open campus programs. And this first one is bringing the classroom to where you are. And of course, this is starting in September 2021. And it tells you what it is all about. This is one of the three courses being offered. The second one is right here, and it invites you to gain your qualification in sport from home or work, and you can choose from three online programs: a BSc in sports coaching, a BSc in sport leadership and management, and a BSc in sport kinetics. And the third one is one which invites you to apply for a postgraduate certificate in leadership for sustainable development. And you can see on your screen again the details as to what this one-year part-time program involves. And we invite you, all of you viewers at home and abroad, in the diaspora, and all St. Lucians, but not only St. Lucians. This reparations is for Caribbean people. The diaspora involves Caribbean people, and therefore this is not just for St. Lucians, but for all Caribbean people, and therefore all Caribbean people following right now do qualify, and therefore we invite you to make use of this opportunity. We also have another flyer. That one is past, but certainly it is a flyer that indicates what our St. Lucia UWI Open Campus unit allies have been doing. It's called the Patricia Isman workshop, and they held one on February 11th, and that workshop has already taken place, but you can look forward by joining the UWI Open Campus St. Lucia's website for results, etc., that would be coming from that. So that being what we have done for now, we have some other slides, but we will take them during the second half of our question and answer period. And it is at this point that we begin to invite our representatives in the diaspora to join us. And in these situations, it is difficult to tell where to start, and it is always safest to start in alphabetical order. But in this particular situation, while everybody else will be going in alphabetical order of the name of country, you would like to start with the president of the Association of St. Lucians Overseas, whose name I don't have, but perhaps Ambassador Fletcher, you could help us identify.
He's Mr. Ross Kadas. He's the president of the St. Lucia Union of St. Lucia Overseas Associations.
Welcome, Mr. Ross Kadas. Over to Mr. Ross Kadas, the president of the Union of St. Lucia Overseas Associations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bousquet, moderator. Let me take this opportunity, first of all, to wish all St. Lucians a happy 42, and to thank the organizers for the work that they're doing in this first event, or first of future events. As I sit and I listen, I must say that the diaspora's knowledge of reparations may not be as advanced as the folks on the call today. And I started to think of a few things, and I wanted to pose a question to the team on the call. How can the people in the diaspora, that's us, fit into the plan of reparations? What kind of support can we as Caribbean people around the world provide in order to help push this cause forward?
Okay, if I could respond to it very quickly, by doing what you've started doing today, participating in not only the discussions at home, but reparations is, as Ambassador Suma and Ambassador Isaac were pointing out, it is a global issue. It is not just a St. Lucian or Caribbean issue. As we speak right now, the US Congress is for the 30th year looking at the HR 40, which House of Representatives number 40, the bill introduced in 1980. And the number 40, not many people know, is because Black people way back, the African Americans were offered 40 acres on a mule, neither of which they received. But with Black Americans, African Americans having carried the Democratic Party and the Biden-Harris team over the top in the last general elections, had it not been for the January 6th events, January 20th and 21st would have seen two major reparations marches on Washington. That has been postponed, but the best way all St. Lucians in the United States, in North America, in Europe, in the Caribbean, wherever you are, join the reparations discussion, whether it is taking place where you are or whether you can follow it online, do either or both. And from the time you start, you're going to continue.
Thank
Unmute.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so can we move on to, of course, each of you will have a chance to come back because questions will be coming in and moving on. So now from Mr. Kadas, we move to Ms. Cynthia Dahlia in Barbados, who is representing St. Lucians in Barbados. Welcome, Ms. Cynthia Dahlia.
Welcome. Unfortunately, it's not Cynthia Dahlia. She's unable to attend.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in for both Cynthia and Petra Poloin. My name is Lawrence Poloin, the husband of Petra Poloin. Okay, so I'm going to be very brief because I wasn't too sure what whether I was supposed to do a presentation. I thought we were supposed to ask questions, but
you can
say the idea of
you can make your presentation a question.
And please tell them your wife's position on the association.
Okay, my wife Petra Poloin is the president of the St. Lucian Association in Barbados. I'm the husband. I'm working regionally. I'm a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. I'm assigned to the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology. which is a regional institution. So I both participate in delivering lectures at the university as well as the regional institution, which is a CARICOM institution. Okay, so the idea of reparations has been long overdue. And so in my little research and knowledge of reparations, I'm not a historian, I'm a physical scientist. What plagues the global Black community to me is division. It seems like the idea of reparations is the only global political narrative which is tending to unite us Black people among the globe. So one of the questions would be, what role will the diaspora play in achieving the objectives of the reparation ideas? And things like, will we consider economic inequality? Because when we look at the Caribbean, there are lots of imbalances in terms of the economies. So should we consider economic inequalities in order to achieve economic balance and inequality? And I also have a couple of questions that was posted before, so I hope that will be addressed later on. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Purloin. And I am answering some of your questions in the chat. But insofar as how the diaspora can participate, like I said to Mr. Kadas, your first step is to get involved, get to know more. Like you've admitted, until this evening, you have tended to be more of a Met person than a reparations person. But every journey starts with the first step, and everybody who's participating in this discussion for the first time is taking the first step on that lengthy journey that our ancestors undertook from the very first day that the first free African was captured and enslaved and started to wish and think and act towards regaining his or her and their freedom. Secondly, having engaged yourselves in knowing more about reparations, you need to, like I said, also look at where and how it applies to where you are. If it is an event or an issue that is of national import, participate, and don't think that because you were not born there, it doesn't apply to you. Reparations, as we are seeking, is for the Caribbean. It is for the 14 CARICOM countries that are seeking it, but on behalf of the entire Caribbean for slavery and native genocide. So it is not only for African descendants, as one of our earlier speakers pointed out, but also for the first people who were subjected to genocide from 1492. So that's our invitation to you to get on board by getting to know more about reparations and ensuring that you play your part, not only individually, but at the level of your association of St. Lucians, being able to organize events that we can participate in from St. Lucia, just like you are participating today in our webinar. Organize your webinars. We will provide whatever support that we can. So let's move on to Mr. Aaron Francis.
Moderator, may I
Yes.
also attempt
Yes.
to answer the question?
Yes. Yes, Ambassador Suma.
Okay, first of all, the two questions had were very similar in relation to what could the diaspora do. And having also served as the ambassador responsible for diaspora affairs, I can tell you that I have met many very influential St. Lucians in the diaspora. and their ability to lobby and advocate for an issue that transcends time, transcends race, and also helps to consolidate identity. I think that it is something in which they can participate more fully, not by just by coming to our meetings, but also organizing their own and participating at the level of legislation within their countries. We have done it before, and in all of these countries where St. Lucians are located, we have a certain amount of influence, and we must start using that influence. To the issue of unity, we will never be on the same page. People see this issue very differently, very differently. Some people want us to forget about it. Some people want us to say, okay, it happened, let's move on. What's the next step? But people don't realize that unless you understand what has happened in your history, you are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. And so I would like us, even if it's 10 people who are fighting for reparations, remember that there were single people during enslavement who asked for reparations. Reparations was not something that started after emancipation. We started before. From the time we were enslaved, we were asking for better conditions. All of that was part of repairing the situation that we were in. We did it in many different ways, and we have to understand that this is not a movement. As I said in my lecture when I did it for the inaugural lecture, that this is not a ragtime movement. This is a movement that has had very solid information. The fact that there has not been success in people's eyes, they tell us, okay, why do you continue to fight? So you will continue to accept the indignity and the inhumanity and allow those people who were involved in human trafficking and who have benefited from human trafficking and built their societies to continue to look down upon us. I think that it is time that we make a firm stance. I saw in the questions whether the Caribbean regional governments were in consensus about this. I can tell you that, yes, there might be some people who think that we need to approach it differently, but there is a consensus that we must pursue reparations. And not just at the level of CARICOM, but in the wider Caribbean. Having served as Secretary General of the ACS, I can tell you that it was in our declaration every time we had a ministerial meeting that we must pursue reparations on behalf of everybody around the Caribbean Sea, because this has kept us in underdevelopment, and we need to look at sustainable development from slavery to now. So I thank the two presenters, the two members of the diaspora for the questions.
Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Suma, for your responses. And we go over, in fact, Ambassador Suma is in the British Virgin Islands, and right there in the British Virgin Islands as well is Mr. Aaron Francis, who is going to speak to us about St. Lucians in the British Virgin Islands and their appreciation of the reparations struggle. And of course, we will recall Ambassador Suma indicating earlier the situation insofar as the demands made to the Danes and the possibilities of the Danes, of the British Virgin Islanders becoming Danish citizens. That is not something that we will have been reading and hearing about across the OECS and the CARICOM region, but as was pointed out by Dr. Hilary Beckles, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies and the chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, the second phase of independence has to include the independence of those remaining colonies by whatever names they are called, dependencies, overseas territories, departments of overseas, whatever they're being called, the British Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands, the French and Dutch Antilles, they all fall within the sphere of those entities that have to be regarded as the next phase of independence for the Caribbean, because like Ambassador Suma and others have said earlier, we cannot have reparations until we are all free, and reparations is for all of us. So how will it go to those of us who are not yet free if and when it comes before we are all free? So over to Mr. Aaron Francis, British Virgin Islands. Welcome. Is Mr. Francis with us? Can you acknowledge Mr. Francis? In which case, if he is having technical problems, we will go over to French Guyana to Mr. Sonny William. Monsieur William Sonny, est-ce là avec nous? Okay, normally we do have some problems with connections. I'm sure that somebody will be in touch with somebody who is going to inform Mr. Aaron Francis and Mr. Sonny William that we have been trying to get to them. Hello, who is it?
Ambassador, yes? Mr. William just called me. And he said, I know he's on, he's watching. I think he may be, like you say, having technical difficulties. He's on. You can see him in on the chat. Did he come in?
We can get back to him. David and the others will try to solve his problem, as they always do. As well as, do you know whether Mr. Aaron Francis is with us? In which case, we move on to Mrs. Felicia Hippolyte. I know she is with us in the United Kingdom, where it is 5 hours ahead. Welcome, Mrs. Felicia Hippolyte. Bonjour et bienvenue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. May I take this opportunity to wish every St. Lucian a happy 42nd independence. I think reparation is long overdue as a result of the greatest injustices perpetrated against humanity, with the legacy still being felt or experienced by our people through global structures and institutions in place at various levels in the fabric of our society. This includes social, economic, educational, law, and other institutions impacting us generally. My question relating to reparation well, I've got two questions actually. One, what is the economic model for reparation on a regional, i.e. CARICOM level, and will it differ from a national level? If the model is yet to be created, what key considerations are being taken into account? Two, what plans are underway for collaborative working with others to arrive at a reparation package in coming into grips with past atrocities?
Okay.
These are my two questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Felicia Hippolyte. I'm glad to offer a response, and of course, any of our presenters who wish to so do can also do so. In response to your first question, what economic model for the regional reparations and how will it differ from national? Well, from day one, it was made clear way back in 2013 when the CARICOM 10-point plan was presented that, like I said, this is for everybody. And what it means first of all, is that a case has to be made by CARICOM for reparations. We can easily say we have a case, as we do, and we know we do, but we are seeking reparations by way of money, value, atonement, and compensation by way of reparations. And therefore, we are being suffered the indignity of having to make a case for what is ours. But that is always what it is when people seek social justice based on historical factors. So there is one case that has to be made by CARICOM, and that case would say we, as an entity representing 14 countries that were dominated in the case of CARICOM by Britain, and in the case of Suriname by the Netherlands, then called Holland. And in order to make that case, however, and this is the difficult part, every country, every one of the 14 CARICOM nations has to make a case. So St. Lucia has to make its case. Dominica has to make its case. Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad, St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Kitts Nevis, Suriname, Belize, Bahamas. Everybody has to make a case. In the case of St. Lucia, we have to make two cases because we were enslaved. Slavery was managed in St. Lucia by both the British and the French. So we have two cases to make. I must confess that CARICOM is not satisfied, and we at the National Preparatory Committee level are also not satisfied that the cases are being made at the national level with the urgency that is required. These cases cannot be made by a private lawyer. They cannot be made by the National Preparatory Committee, even though it is a government-appointed committee. It has to be made by the government, by government lawyers, as part of the government of St. Lucia and every other government's case to be presented to the European Union, not to Britain, but to the European Union, so that all those countries that benefited from slavery would be part of the discussion. Secondly, what are the plans for collaboration? The CARICOM Reparations Commission comprises one commissioner who is normally the chair of the National Reparations Committee, each of whom is a commissioner on the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which meets on a regular basis to discuss where things are at, not only in taking the reparations message at home nationally, but the extent to which the government of each territory is doing what needs to be done by way of making that case. And we are still at the stage where we have not yet been able to influence the sort of mechanism, for example, that would activate our Attorney General's department, our Department of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and the various departments of law in government have to be in as part of this. And it is our intent as a committee during 2021, during the first half of this year, to approach and engage those entities, because that case has to be presented, and St. Lucia is one of the countries that is unfortunately behind, despite the fact that we have to make two cases. I don't know whether any other presenter would like to add to this. In which case, we can move on to Mr. Cornelius Alfred in Atlanta, Georgia, one of two representatives in the United States. So let's go to Mr. Cornelius Alfred. Is he here with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Go ahead.
First of all, let me just extend 42nd anniversary independence to all St. Lucians and to St. Lucia as well. I'd just like to say that, I'm very happy to be involved in such a forum today. Although I have a lot of questions when it comes to reparations, what comes to mind is, compensation, not only in the form of money, but apologies, etc. From the conversation, I've gathered two things. We have a National Reparations Committee, and we also have the CARICOM reparations. And what I'm going to ask, maybe you've touched a lot of what I want to ask. But however, I'm seeing there is kind of not confusion, not division, but the alignment of the two. And how can we make it work? Because if nationally, each country is supposed to present their case, but yet still you have CARICOM, which has a 10-point plan. Okay, so if that CARICOM plan differs from the national plan, how can we, approach the reparation as one people, knowing that we are part of CARICOM, but yet still we still have to individually, do our own, not do, but
make our own case.
Make our own case, yes.
Okay. Any other question?
And also, each island to me would have different, when it comes to reparation, they would have different categories. For example, Haiti may be seeking financial compensation because of the monies they've paid. But St. Lucia, we may be looking for maybe just an apology, So in that case, how can we align everything nationally and with CARICOM?
Okay, I'm glad to answer these very important questions. First of all, we are seeking atonement by way of economic reparations preceded by an apology. The reason why we want economic reparations is because, as with everything else, as with Sir Arthur coming before his time, writing up the Manifesto for Reparations 82 years ago, and we are only now beginning to realize what he did long after he's gone. The call for reparations by CARICOM was initiated in 2013 as a result of an intervention by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent, supported by then Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Denzel Douglas. And they were able to convince CARICOM to move on. Now, what we have is a situation not of the cart before the horse, but for once in our history, CARICOM leaders have taken a decision, not for once, but this is another indication where CARICOM leaders have taken a decision on behalf of the CARICOM people that is absolutely important to have been taken, and which probably would not have been taken by virtue of the delays if there had to be a sort of a regional referendum on whether to go ahead on reparations. So having taken that decision, having identified the 10-point plan, the 10-point plan is what we are seeking from from Britain. And I will be going through that in a while for you and others. But if David would just put it up for me, if he can, the matrix of the 10-point plan, it looks at 10 areas in which we are saying, these are the things we would like to come out of reparations. And if we receive what we are asking for, which a figure has been put to now as 500 billion with a capital B, 500 billion US dollars worth of reparations to be distributed across the region on the basis of the formula that was promoted by Sir Arthur Lewis in his book entitled Labor in the West Indies, published in 1939. It is available on Amazon. And in there, once you read that, you will be able to understand why 82 years later, the CARICOM heads of government on the 1st of August 2020 announced that they had adopted wholesale the manifesto, which was also described as the intellectual blueprint for reparations, and Sir Arthur as the intellectual author of the blueprint for CARICOM reparations that is aimed at how we are going to distribute the returns on the basis of the 10-point plan. And like I said, I will come back to the 10-point plan. But by virtue of your second question, the NRC and the CRC are on one page because the CRC is a commission comprising commissioners representing the 14 CARICOM countries. And here is the 10-point plan. I'll go through it briefly. The 10 things we are demanding from Europe. 1, a full and formal apology. That needs no explanation. 2, repatriation. We want to be able to know that the issue of repatriation must always be open to the extent that any African descendants who want to go back to the motherland should be able to do so with the least entry restrictions as possible. 3, Indigenous Peoples Development Program, a program for the development of our indigenous people, the people we learned at school as being Caribs and Arawaks, but we never heard about the Garifunas, about the Mandingos, about the Maroons. These indigenous people, they preceded slavery, and the genocide that was practiced against them was so effective that they were reduced from millions to tens of thousands to mere thousands over less than a century. So we need an Indigenous Peoples Development Program. Our cultural institutions, we need libraries that will be able to show our connection to our African history. In every one of these territories have remnants and replicas of our slave past. Sometimes we pass them all day long and we have no idea that is what they were. We need to have those cultural institutions, museums, etc., that will allow us to be able to look inwards, look at home and see what we have. Number 5, a public health crisis. The COVID crisis underlines, and remember this 10-point plan was done in 2013, but public health crisis, we need as a region to work together. And the COVID crisis has reiterated that until CARICOM works together as a unit to secure enough vaccines for the entire region, as long as they go one by one, we will continue to delay the presence of COVID in the Caribbean. Number 6, illiteracy eradication. In 2021, the age of the internet, we still have many, and therefore too many people in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia, and in every CARICOM member state who are still illiterate. And in St. Lucia, this is underlined also by the fact that we are bilingual, and apart from having people who are still illiterate in English, Creole literacy is still a national problem. Number 7, African Knowledge Program. In our history, like we are doing in the lectures that we do monthly, we need to be able to recreate our links with Africa, to know from whence we cometh, so that we can know where we are heading. So knowledge of our African history, which is not being taught at school sufficiently, has to be researched and promoted by us. Number 8, psychological rehabilitation. We still feel and suffer from inferiority complex. We still have black people, non-white people in the Caribbean and in the diaspora, dyeing their skin, changing their color, arranging the texture of the hair, feeling inferior because of who they are, how they look. And this is not something that is new. Today is the 55th anniversary to the day when Malcolm X was assassinated in the United States, 55 years ago today. But in his autobiography, Malcolm X points out that he lived all of his life. He died at age 39, but he lived his entire life regretting that his mother was half white, and he felt ashamed up until his death for having had white blood within him. That is how much he felt. Now, whether you want to call it an inferiority complex or a superiority complex, at the end of the day, we still have, particularly in the diaspora, where you have interracial marriages and interracial communities being built. We have to be able to overcome the psychological weaknesses that we keep on our own because of how we look. Number 9, technology transfer. During slavery in the British West Indies, it was stipulated by law that nothing must be produced or manufactured in the islands, not even a screw. The role of these islands was to produce the sugar and the raw materials for Britain. There would have been no technology, no manufacturing. So while UK enjoyed the Industrial Revolution coming out of slavery, we were deprived by law from any technology transfer. And for developing countries, including the CARICOM, St. Lucia, and the wider Caribbean community, for us to catch up with those who enslaved our ancestors, for us to catch up with the heirs and successors of those who are responsible for our state today, we have to have that technology transfer. And as Ambassador Suma pointed out, we have St. Lucians and Caribbean people everywhere in the world who are influential and can help us achieve the things that we need. And finally, debt cancellation. We cannot move forward. Every 10 years, every 5 years, something happens globally to indicate to us why we cannot move forward on our own. We cannot beat climate change on our own. We cannot beat COVID on our own. And we cannot move forward. Haiti cannot move forward without the cancellation or the return of the cost it paid for its reparations. And we in St. Lucia and all other CARICOM countries cannot move forward with the level that we would like to, with the level of debts that we have. So these 10 points brought to you, I must say that they were put together in one package by Dawn French. We have to thank her. She went to the CARICOM Reparations Commission website, saw the way it was presented, and thought she would make this wonderful gift to us, which we are prepared to make available to each and every one of your entities abroad in the diaspora to help promote the CARICOM 10-point plan. So there are no differences in objectives, my friend Cornelius, and one can only hope that you and all others will make use of this to take us to our next stage. Okay? And we'll move on to our next presenter from Canada, Miss Ohana Obaiza Momwan.
Before you go on to Joanna, Earl, let me let you know that Aaron is on now.
Ah, Aaron is there. Okay, let's go to Aaron first. He was already there, and we'll ask the other lady to stand by. Mr. Aaron Francis, British Virgin Islands, welcome. Unmute your mic, please. Aaron?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. And happy independence to us, I will say. Reparations is a passionate issue, and I'm feeling that this will never go away until we are satisfied in one way or form. In the British Virgin Islands, that subject is ongoing at the moment, and a previous governor said that paying reparations to victims of slavery is not a position that the United Kingdom has taken, right? The UK has not taken a position on reparations. With regards to reparation, my question is, how much are we seeking? Is there a figure to it? And if it's not monetary, what are we seeking with regards to reparation?
Okay.
The third question is, do we have a case, or have we built a case for reparations to present? Where are we now with regards to that?
Okay, I'll quickly go through that because we have answered both of the questions when we were trying to get you the figure. We have finally arrived at the figure. It was announced on the 1st of August, Emancipation Day 2020. CARICOM is seeking the equivalent of 500 billion US dollars worth of reparations, not necessarily in cash, but more in kind through a regional economic package to be patterned on that recommended by Sir Arthur Lewis in his manifesto for reparations contained in his book entitled Labor in the West Indies, published in 1939, which is available on Amazon, in which he points out how we should be going about what we should be asking for, why we should be asking for it, and how we will go in, what we are going to be doing with it. So read that book, and it is going to help answer a lot of those questions. I also raised the question of the case. Yes, we all have to make a case. We have to make two cases or one case in different parts. So we may have to make one CARICOM case to be presented to the European Union, because the European countries that benefited from slavery is not only the UK or France or Spain. There are at least 13 European Union countries. It also includes non-European Union countries like Russia that also had interest in slavery and benefited from slavery in the Caribbean. That general case has to be made to the European Union, but within that general case, we have to have every country making its own case. St. Lucia making its two cases for slavery under France and Britain, and all the others that were enslaved by Britain making their cases for that. In the case of Suriname, making a case for and against the Netherlands. And this is where the likes of the OECS Commission, to which the British Virgin Islands and other non-independent territories belong, has also been showing interest in reparations throughout 2020. And we would hope that in 2021, the OECS Commission, which also represents the British Virgin Islands, the French Antilles, and others, as well as Bermuda, will be able to find a formula to put reparations on the table. What the governor said to you was right, not that Britain has not taken a position. Britain has taken a position. In 2015, the then Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, went to Jamaica and said Britain is not paying. He's one of those who said it's been too long, too far away, but lo and behold, in that same year, 2015, was the year when the final bit of money was paid to the slave owners for the abolition of slavery. So while he was saying, let's forget it, the likes of his great-grandfathers who had 500 slaves in Jamaica, his family was still collecting dues for the sale of those slaves. So we are doing it together. Britain is against it, but as you know, in every country, what matters is what the people think, but what the people think and where they stand is not always reflected in government policy. And as long as we have governments in Britain that are against reparations, then we will not see Britain agreeing to reparations. But in the post-George Floyd situation, Britain has had to face quite a lot. The churches in Britain, all of the institutions of higher learning, the universities, they have all been exposed. And with Britain approaching the 200th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in 2024, look out for Britain starting to sing the reparations song, except that it will be singing it in English and not in any of our Caribbean or African languages. So let's move on.
Well, our French have finally got, and we are in the back of the scenes, they're working with them. All of the French are listening, and Sonny is on now.
Okay, so we now move to Mr. William Sonny. That is how it is pronounced in English, but it is Sonny William. Bonjour, bienvenue. Monsieur Sonny, ou ka pale ban nou sorti kayen, ban nou nouvel sorti kayen. Bien pale ban nou.
Eh bien, moi, je dis bonjour et puis bonne fête indépendante pour tout Saint-Lucien qui est à Saint-Lucie et puis tous ces diaspora, tout spécialement monde qui est la Guyane française. Donc, vous savez, nous ne pouvons pas parler anglais aujourd'hui parce qu'il y a chaque monde nous mettait au courant aujourd'hui à dire ça belle ça belle initiative ça que Madame Fletcher et puis le gouvernement Saint-Lucie n'est pas en place. Ah, ça belle, ça joli tout bon. Et puis, ça m'a dit, c'est que ça c'est un bel bagage, ça très belle. Et nous, il y a chaque monde, ou tout le monde, toute la Guyane qui a coûté Saint-Lucie aujourd'hui. Et puis, moi, je fais bel bonjour pour tous les autres Saint-Luciens, les présidents des autres associations qui ont lancé les autres pays. Coucou, bonne fête indépendante. Mais l'année qui a interpellé nous en Chai, de toute façon, nous savons que Saint-Lucie, c'est en bas anglais et français. Et aujourd'hui, nous toujours senti que après toute sa misère qui fait, nous vivons fait indépendant nous quand même. Mais moi, quand je remarque qu'on dit que l'anglais et le français n'ont pas content que nous sommes indépendants. Parce que nous toujours eu 3 cas et problèmes dans chaque côté de l'administration. OK? Donc, moi, nous parlons de salaire que peut-être Angleterre, pas tomber d'accord tout le temps sur nos réparations. Mais il y a un droit. Il y a un droit à réparer certaines choses. L'Angleterre et la France. Parce que si nous prenons from time, nous regardons au niveau de l'esclavage, nous pas jamais nous pas demandé personne pour être esclave. Hein. Ils sont obligés de nous faire ça, nous faire aujourd'hui. OK? Et aujourd'hui, nous commandons réparation pour beaucoup de choses. Et c'est un combat. Et moi, big up tout le monde qui a gommé pour sa réparation. Parce que moi, je trouve que ça inadmissible que aujourd'hui à Saint-Lucie, nous, Saint-Luciens, nous avons problème pour travel côté français, nous avons problème pour travel côté en anglais. Moi, je feel si c'est mon certificat pour history into consideration pour vous savoir qui ça y a fait, et pour aujourd'hui, nous still pas libéré dans beaucoup de bagailles. Moi, je dis, c'est pas normal. C'est pas normal. OK? Et puis, bravo pour Madame Fletcher, nous ambassade, qui vient Cayenne et il allait tout partout en la terre à côté qui est Saint-Lucien. Et puis, nous tous avons le même combat. Right? Et c'est un combat, pour moi, il pas ni la fin. Parce que nous ne pouvons pas arriver à trouver vraiment ça nous besoin. OK? Parce que aujourd'hui, Saint-Lucien qui est en Guyane, qui travaille tellement bien en pays, et puis nous style les problèmes. Nous, quand on a fait le gouvernement pour nous pas ni pardon. OK? nous sommes étrangers, ils estiment nous comme étrangers. Mais tout en sachant que nous, cette lycéenne en Guyane, depuis 1832, et puis on dit qu'on n'y est pas fait. Parce que foncier n'a pas qu'à reconnaître certains bagailles et nous, cette lycéenne fait. Là, nous montons l'Angleterre, pareil. Chaque cette lycéenne, l'Angleterre, chaque cette lycéenne monte l'Angleterre pour étudier, chaque réussi, chaque qui pas réussi. Mais yet still, nous toujours des problèmes avec sa réparation, ça qui n'a pas jamais vu mettre le white flag là-haut. Alors, le combat a continué et nous avons dit aussi, Madame Fletcher, continuez à le combat qu'on mener et nous-mêmes aussi, nous avons toujours gourmet pour garder si quand même nous faisons une réparation et pour faciliter la vie nous et the future generation.
Merci, Anshai, Mr. Sonny William. And of course, as he pointed out, the St. Lucians have been in Cayenne since 1832. And not much is known about the contribution of St. Lucia to the development of French Guiana, because St. Lucians, we still refer to the territory called French Guiana, which is located on the northeastern shoulder of South America, next to Guyana and Suriname, part of the three Guyanas, but we still call the entire territory Cayenne. And Cayenne is the capital, but we call the entire country territory Cayenne because St. Lucians left to go to Cayenne to dig for gold. Many, unfortunately, never returned. But in Cayenne today, as we speak, Sonny William and anybody who knows Cayenne properly will tell you that St. Lucians are in control. Every mayor and every head of a national institution in Cayenne who was not born in France has St. Lucian parentage or is descendant of St. Lucian. Every mayor of Cayenne for the past 20 years, bar very few, have had St. Lucian parentage. However, as he has indicated, St. Lucians are not having it nice in Cayenne. There is still up until today in 2021, thanks to the refusal of the French government, St. Lucians in Cayenne cannot take a direct flight to St. Lucia. And when they fly to Martinique, they have to overnight. You cannot get a direct flight to St. Lucia from Cayenne, even if you hire a plane. These are some of the issues that William has been pointing out, and these issues, as he correctly pointed out as well, will remain so because the British, the French, and the others who sort of granted independence on a platter did so because in the same way that in 1834, the British got into getting rid of slavery and entering into emancipation because they recognized that following the Haitian Revolution, that signaled the end of slavery. So they took in front. Similarly, independence granted to the Caribbean territories was not because the European countries wanted us to be free and independent. Look at our constitutions across the Caribbean. The British ensured in St. Lucia and all of the others that we have, in order to change the constitution, you need a 2/3 majority in a referendum. And that is impossible in any country in today's, particularly today, when choices, people are becoming stronger in their choices. So they gave us the independence, I say capital G-A-V-E, because we didn't fight, we didn't lose any lives for our independence, we didn't struggle in the way that others fought independence wars. And while this is fortunate, we also have to understand that it doesn't mean that because we got independence without a fight, that we should not fight for what we should have got, which is the respect that comes with being independent nations that are free. As long as we still belong to the Commonwealth, and as long as Her Majesty the Queen continues to be on our dollar bill, and as long as our meetings of parliament have to start with paying allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen, our independence is still missing a little something. But we're running ahead of time. I would like us, if possible right now, to go to Miss Uhana Obaiza Mama One in Canada.
Good day, everyone. I'm Johanna Obaizamoan. I would like to first of all say happy 42nd Independence to all St. Lucians. And if I could expatiate on what my good friend, Mr. Ross Kadas asked, is there future plans of reparation awareness for the diaspora? Also, is there going to be a committee put together where the diaspora could actively assist in the venture? Also, I have two other questions. I just want to be brief. What policies are being considered for the reparation, and what are the arguments supporting or opposing this venture? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Brief questions, the very interesting questions, and of course, other presenters can add to that. The idea of a diaspora committee is a new one at the level of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. We have been giving thought to how we could bring the diaspora in, and Ambassador Fletcher's initiative came right on cue. Because it provided us with the opportunity to start the ball rolling. And we have to thank her for the participation that we have seen so far. It can happen this way. You already have Mr. Kadas representing the Union of Associations. My suggestion would be that every national Association of St. Lucians in the diaspora can set up a committee or an entity that looks at your participation from where you are in the national reparations debate at home, in the region, and globally. And on that basis, when sufficient committees have been established, or even before that, as a driving force, you can establish on your union, have a special committee or a special person responsible for coordinating the establishment of those national reparations subcommittees in the various committees in the diaspora. It is not for us to tell you how to do it. These are just suggestions on how you may want to look at it. Secondly, those who oppose are running out of arguments. Basically, the main argument they used to have was that this has taken too long. It's such a long time ago. Well, as Malcolm X said before he was killed, he said, in effect, that our parents are not there. Your parents are not there. He was speaking to the sons and daughters of the oppressors who oppose reparations. And he's saying, listen, normally when you inherit an estate after your parents die, you have to pay the debts incurred by that estate before the death of the owner. And therefore, while our parents are not there to pay the reparations, and your parents are not there while our parents are not there to collect and your parents are not there to pay, the thing is, we are there to collect for our parents and you are there to pay for your parents. And this is what we are saying to Europe. It's never too late to correct history and to pay for outstanding debts, which another book which we would strongly recommend is Britain's Black Debt by Sir Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies and the chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which puts the whole context of Britain's Black Debt to its former British West Indies colonies is put together. So we've come to the closing point, so we have to start closing down. I don't think we have missed anybody else. So I'd like to thank all of our presenters
All
and
you have left out Sean
Mr.
and Kevin.
Sean Anthony, and Kevin Williams.
But Kevin is not there. He had an emergency. He had to run off.
Okay, Sean Anthony. Sean
is not there. Kevin is there.
Oh, Kevin is there. Kevin,
yes.
J.B. Williams in Canada. Sorry, you're our last presenter.
This is our honorable ex-minister's son.
Ah, okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
Greetings, everyone. I just want to wish everyone a happy 42nd independence to all St. Lucians at home and abroad. I also want to thank the organizers of this event. This has been quite insightful and enjoyable, actually. And in thinking of the themes being discussed and debated, my question is, what are the challenges of states like St. Lucia receiving foreign aid and also in the pursuit of reparations? I didn't look up how much foreign aid we receive from Europe or if this is still a thing, but is Europe adopting the position that foreign aid encompasses the goals of reparation and thus refusing uptake of the issue? And finally, like, what are some of the strategies that have been used or are in development to combat this challenge?
Okay, very quickly, in the interest of time, all of those who owe us and have expressed unwillingness to pay have used that same argument that they have given us foreign aid over the period of time. Germany is saying the same to Namibia. Italy has saying the same to others, and therefore we do not accept that. We do have other countries, Ambassador Suma will let you know that there are countries within the wider CARICOM community, from Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, again, and others who in their summits, whether at the ALBA level, at the level of the central, the CELAC, the Caribbean and Latin American Economic Community, at these various regional levels, you have pledges of support for reparations, not necessarily financial support, but if somebody is willing, or if a country is willing to support us in our reparations cause, then that support can come in many different ways, and that can be tabulated as foreign assistance. The strategies are all contained in the 10-point plan. We would also recommend that you read Sir Arthur Lewis's a book, Labor in the West Indies, 1939. It is on Amazon. We recommend that you also read Britain's Black Debt by Sir Hilary Beckles. It is also on Amazon. And in this age of the internet, there is so much that you can get by just visiting the website of the CARICOM Reparations Commission in Guyana, and of course the St. Lucia National Reparations Commission website will be updated. We have all of your addresses and we will make all of them available to all of you. So in the interest of time, we have to move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Kevin Williams. And happy Independence Day to everyone. In order, our last three presentations today, we are going to have, first of all, we'd like our technical team to line up the video by the late Her Excellency Dame Sesen Descartes. It's called Mamaila Diwai. And following that, we are going to be joined by Mr. Morgan Dalfini, a St. Lucian historian, researcher, and poet in London, who addressed our last National Reparations lecture on Thursday evening and delivered a poem to us that we would like to share with you. And we would ask Dr. Dalfini to stand by with the poem with which we are going to close today. So if the technical team is ready, Mama Ladi, why?
Game Commander of the Order of the British Empire, Mrs. Marie Selifa Sesen Descartes, SLMM, BEM. Why encore? Ça toujours, ça bien va moins. Maman il a dit yo tan yo palais, yo ma panele, mamele pio. Wadlo ya bat mama, wadlo ya bat papa, wadlo yema. Ça c'est kana sova. Maman il a dit why encore? Ça toujours. Wadlo yema. Why encore? Ça va moins, ça vient va moins. Les entendre va bien, c'est pas moins au palais. Moi donc j'y viens marin, moi parle les pions, moi parle les pions. Moi donc on a sauvé, moi donc j'abatte maman, moi donc j'abatte papa. Maman l'a dit why encore? Ça toujours. Les entendre yo va bien, c'est pas moi au palais. Wadlo j'abatte maman, wadlo qu'on a sauvé, ça c'est du vieux marin. Maman il a dit why, maman il a dit why, ça encore. Maman il a dit why.
I'm assuming I continue.
Yes, sorry, I was not muted. Dr. Dalfini, like I said, Dr. Dalfini presented on Thursday evening, and he drew to our attention something. When I said earlier, there are things we see and we hear every day, and we don't really appreciate what they are. And we love that song. And when we hear about Wadlo Bat Mamai, Wadlo Bat Papai, we think it's referring to a person, and Dr. Dalfini was able to point out to us Wadlo is the Wadlo, the king of the water. Back in those days when the countries that ruled the waves were the ones who were in charge, and the ones who ruled the waves in St. Lucia, the representatives, beat their mothers, beat their fathers, and beat us. And they are the Wadlo. But let's go to close our session today. Dr. Morgan Dalfini, historian, and we have a copy of the cover of his book, which we will display while he is delivering his poem. Dr. Dalfini, the floor is yours.
Merci à vous. Namaste, salam alaikum, sakafet. Bon 42e anniversaire indépendance. I will be reading from a poem called Inspiration, and it starts in English, then it goes into our language Creole, and because of time, I'm just saying to you that the Creole part is basically asking for inspiration for us to continue this struggle for independence, including reparations. Inspiration. The heavens ache, all the songs that might have been
lightning blue with thunder's cry, blue to touch, blue plunder of the earth, but they were not sung. The blue did not touch, heartache of colonial slavery, voices held in prison, prisoners holding in an ache. The cry is all around and you cannot escape to blue clouds, to calm seas, to deep philosophy, here where philosophy is action. Mwen te pe pale, men yo chwe voix mwen. Mwen te vle vole, men yo coupe ziel mwen. Lang mwen ka bat, selman bat, kon la koutim, kon che mwen. Kita voix kay viwe, gibier blé espoir, ciel blé la paix, sans tonnerre, sans éclair, mais épisier clair. Déviwe un jour, si bel pays espoir. Déviwe un jour, belle voix, déchaînez-moi, libérez tête moi, quittez-moi savant corps, dit fait kachil, quittez-moi savant corps, kachil les action, ensemble, ensemble, blé tonnerre, blé plaisir, inspiration. Merci un pile. Ek, nous kay continuer, yon manière ben l'autre, et puis tek nous lever, ka essayer, chebe liberté.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Dalfini and Ambassador Fletcher. You would want to check your email as we speak. And of course, folks, this is where we come to the end of today's session. We have one more activity, which is the usual protocol. We normally say protocol having been established, but not when it comes to the vote of thanks and saying thanks to everybody who has made things possible. So we now go to Ambassador Fletcher, who will deliver our vote of thanks. Ambassador Fletcher. Is she there? Could we bring in Ambassador Fletcher?
Yes, you hear me. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, right. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who is here today, who made this possible. All of you on YouTube, on Facebook, on UE site, on the Zoom. Here, I want to take this opportunity to thank you. Following such enlightening presentations and discussions on a topic of vital interest to St. Lucia at home and abroad, we wish to sincerely thank all of you who helped make today a success. Let us start with the Diaspora. And you know, I am extremely grateful to you for responding so readily when I sent out the call for this invitation to participate. For those of you who came on to ask questions, from those of you all around the world, this is not about them and us, it's still about us and not them. After all, we are all St. Lucians and Caribbean people at home and abroad. We are sure it has been helpful to everyone who participated, and we look forward to this event continuing beyond this year's Independence Reflections. I first want to thank our presenters and questioners from the Diaspora. Well, our presenters here and the questioners from the Diaspora, our 10 questioners, especially President of the St. Lucia Unity UK and the USLOA, those our French representatives, in fact, everybody, especially our young people from the diaspora who came out and who brought their whole crowd to listen in. I know that there's so many of you. Thank you for being all around the world to join in to listen. We also want to thank everyone who has made tonight possible and today possible. Our presenters, Dame Paulette Louise, Monsignor Dr. Patrick Anthony, Ambassador Dr. June Suma, Ambassador Dr. Elma Jean Isaac, and the chair of the National Reparations Committee, our moderator, Earl. Thank you so much. As per usual, we want to thank the technical team at UE. We wouldn't open campus marketing. We would not leave you out. Cherie, David, Patrick, and Richard, without whom we would not have had or heard anything. Thank you so much. Team UE Open Campus. Mr. Cleveland Sam, Mr. CJ, well, I hope I pronounce this properly. If I don't, forgive me, Bonadi, Mr. David Foster, Mr. David Mark, Mr. Patrick Johnson, and Ms. Cherie Glasgow. Again, thank you all so much. And I look forward to working with you guys again as we press this of this. We also want to thank Dawn French for her peanut presentation and Dr. Morgan Delfinis, her Black and our beloved and immortal Cessan Descartes, whose videos we use. We give special thanks to Monsignor Patrick Anthony for his unique solution presentation. And finally, most of all, we want to thank all of you who contributed to this session by your very presence, having taken time off to spend the last 2 hours, hopefully better understanding issues that might have clouded our minds until now. I thank you, viewers, listeners, callers, questioners, everyone, wherever you are, who's been with us tonight. And I also invite you at the end of this historic session to join us again for our 5th Virtual Schools History and Reparations Lecture this coming Thursday, 25th February, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. When the topic will be in observance of Caribbean independence movements and Black History Month. The topic for next Thursday's Regional Schools Lecture, which will also be broadcast by and through the same UE Open Campus feedback, Facebook and YouTube channels, as this evening will be the unwritten history of Black Caribbean icons. And finally, from me to you, it was a distinct pleasure, and as always, to help make it happen. Thanks for appreciating, and thank you. Happy 42nd Independence anniversary to all of you and my special diaspora. I love you. Thank you for supporting me as usual. Thank you, UE, and thank you, NRC.
And thank you, Ambassador Fletcher. And this is where we say goodbye to all of you and to all of the 57,000 St. Lucians in the diaspora, no matter where you are, on behalf of the National Reparations Committee, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, all of our presenters and participants. I'm Earl Bouske saying, until next time, happy Independence Day and keep the struggle